I want to talk to you about something that is fairly important about as far as the sound of the instruments that you're working on or you plan on making. And that's the nut right here. Believe it or not, this little piece is crucial to the sound of your instrument. On this particular build, I used a graphite nut, which is a very, very resemblance of a natural tone from a bone or an ivory, in the case of real old instruments that people don't use anymore. A lot of nuts come in the plastic material or some brass rollers in the case of Floyd Rose and other sort of tremolo systems. But because we're looking for that vintage sound here, I elected to use this graphite material, which is made by Tusk, which is what most of your premier companies are going to now, versus bone. Because bone and ivory is a soft material, it has spots where you lose tone in it, and it's not consistent. This is a really consistent product. It's also adds very bright sound to your instrument, like them older vintage instruments. Now, some guitars come with plastic nuts, which is really not an issue at all. It depends what type of style you're playing. Most of those instruments are your Jacksons and your heavier played instruments for metals. Sounds that are more distorted, lots of gain, things like that, where the tone isn't exactly the most crucial thing on it, and it's been regulated more by the amp than it is by the natural sound, such as a hollow body or an acoustic instrument. Now, along with the nut, scale length is fairly important, I think. There's two basic scales. You have the Fender scale, which is 25 and a half, and you have the Gibson scale, which is 24 3/4. And that simply is the distance from the nut to where the strings ride across the saddle. That's what your scale is. Or double the distance from the 12th fret to the saddle. And that's where they arrive at that 25 and a half in Fender's case, or 24 3/4 in Gibson's case. What's the difference between the two scales? The only real difference is string tension. It does change the tone and the sound a little bit, but with the shorter Gibson scale, you're going to find it's easier to bend the strings. It's more blues orientated. It's a warmer tone. It's what I prefer to play, but many people do play Fenders, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're fine instruments. It's just what I prefer. Now, if you notice when you have your open tuning there and you're having issues with a lot of feedback or fret noise and stuff like that, more than likely the issue is that your intonation is off because you've either moved the saddle or it wasn't set up properly when it was purchased. Intonation simply means the fact that what you have your tuning at the top here, E, A, D, G, B, E in this case, when this one will be completed, at the 12th fret, when you hold those strings down, which is one octave higher, it should be tuned the same. If it's not, it's going to require some adjustments on your saddle. Once that's adjusted properly, it's set to where it belongs. Do not play with it. Or if it's been professionally set up, leave it where it is. That has all been set up with the string tension from the nut to the saddle to the bridge, the angle from the saddle to the bridge. That's all been set up that way to assure that the intonation of your guitar is correct. Now, some people in general will notice, and you will notice it yourself, that in different times of the year, when the humidity goes up and down, you start to get some fret buzz and things of that nature. That's when people get the old screwdriver out and start moving the saddle up to get the strings off the fretboard to eliminate that buzz. That is the incorrect way to adjust that. All of your adjustments should be made right here at the truss rod. Simply take off the cover and adjust it counterclockwise to add more of a dish, clockwise to flatten it up to bring the strings back down. You shouldn't be moving that more than 1/4 of a turn. If you are moving it more than that, you're finding you're still having issues. What the problem is more than likely, if you take the strings off and you look at your frets, you're going to have some marks or scars on your frets, and it's time to level that fretboard again. And that's something I would recommend, unless you're proficient at it and have a good deal of knowledge about guitars, that you take it in and have that done. You may end up taking more off than you need, or lowering the wrong frets and giving it bigger issues, meaning that the frets would have to be removed then. So unless you're really prepared to do that and know what's going on with that situation, leave that to a professional. But once that's all been adjusted, your intonation is correct, and the guitar sounds fine, The only adjustment you should have to make is that truss rod, like I said, when the weather changes 2, maybe 3 times a year. Thanks a lot for watching this portion of it, and I got to get back to work on this so you can see the completed project.